Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar focused on recruitment metrics to power your hiring strategies. I think we'll wait just a little bit to allow some more people to log in to this call. But in the meantime, perhaps I'll just give you a little bit of info on the tool we are using here. You should be able to see in the top right of your window a little chat tab. Feel free to say hello, maybe say where you're logging in from as well, as I think we're a bit of an international bunch here today. You'll also see a question tab right next to it. So please feel free throughout the webinar to pose your questions there. We'll make sure to cover all of these at the end. And the third tab being the poll section. This is a question that we'll pose to all of you in a little bit, but feel free to already fill out your answer in this section as well. All right. Hi, Monique from South Africa. Jolijn from the Netherlands. Lebanon, Madrid. Quite an international group indeed. Perfect. Great to see so many saying hi. All right. Well, it's a couple minutes past 4, so I'll go ahead and get started. So just quickly to introduce myself. My name is Sophie Gustafsson. I am a Senior Customer Success Manager here at Recruitee. So what does that mean? It means that I make sure that our customers receive the most value out of Recruitee. A crucial or fundamental part of that is for them to reach their desired outcomes. So a lot of customers that I work with, when they get Recruitee, they have the aim of becoming more data-driven. So that is something that I assist with in terms of achieving that goal, basically. And that's why I'm here today. But let me give the microphone over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Sophie. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Richard Brown, and I'm the lead talent and DE&I partner for McLaren Racing. So I joined McLaren Racing in October last year to come on board to really help define and build a new recruitment strategy, but also responsible for any aspects regarding recruitment tools, processes, policies, but also the day-to-day recruitment itself as well. Prior to McLaren, I've got a mixed background, mostly in agency recruitment, but a bit internally with Motorsport Network prior to McLaren as well. So yeah, looking forward to chatting a bit more through it today.
Perfect. Thank you, Richard. So what we'll go over today, we'll start off with a poll. As I mentioned at the very beginning, you have the poll section in the third tab from the chat. So please fill out the question, which is, do you use data to make recruitment decisions? Very easy. Answer it with a yes, with a no, with a sometimes, and submit your vote, please, so we can make the whole session a bit interactive. Following the poll, we'll look into recruitment metrics in general. I'll hand over to Richard to talk more about the metrics used at McLaren's Racing. I'll then take over to have a look at the various dashboards you can build in Recruitee. And of course, there's also space for a Q&A at the very end of today's session. All right, so I can see quite a few have already filled out the poll section. Last chance, any more answers for the poll? Okay, so what I can see from the poll is we have 53% saying 52% saying they sometimes make use of recruitment metrics to make data to make recruitment decisions. 35% say yes, and 15% say no. So we can see that it's actually not that many who regularly actually use that data to make those decisions. And this is very much in alignment with what I've found and what I want to display to you here, that 75% of HR leaders state that HR analytics are important to them. So perhaps along with the lines of many of you here, because you attended this webinar, you find this topic important, right? However, 50% of them do not make use of these metrics. So we agree it's important. A lot of them don't make use of it. And 25% of the HR leaders that do don't actually analyze it. So we find that a lot of people, they'll pull out their metrics, they'll make a note of it, they'll track it, but what use is it to us if we don't actually analyze it? And what I have found with the customers that I onboard at Recruitee is, yes, they realize the importance, but a lot of people just don't quite know how to start. So, how to get started? I think the key thing that you need to consider when setting up your KPIs, when having a think about what it is you want to measure, it has to actually align with your business goals. What is it that your company wants to achieve? What is important to you? As previously mentioned, it doesn't really make sense just to note down random recruitment metrics if they are not valuable to you. More is not more. And don't just report, review and improve. It's a cycle. You keep reviewing, altering, improving. So again, we don't just download our Excel or our diagrams of the reporting. We need to actually review it and see how we can improve. Become proactive rather than reactive. If you continuously do this, you'll be able to become proactive and be strategic about those decisions that you make. And it'll also allow you to identify patterns so that you can be predictive about the future. And I think one key way to do this is to set yourself targets in this regard as well. All right, let me hand it over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Sophie. So I'll start off by giving a bit of a description about McLaren Racing for those of you that aren't familiar. So McLaren Racing is a historical race team, probably most popularly known as McLaren Racing Formula One. We're part of the McLaren Group, which has 3 arms to its business. So we're the racing element of the business. So we operate within motorsport, but we also have an automotive business as well as a technology business as well. But we work specifically within McLaren Racing, and we're a standalone business. We're about 850 employees, and we operate mostly out of the UK, but have some partnerships in different countries around the globe as well. In terms of the various aspects of sport that we're involved in, I'd probably say about 90% of our activity is in Formula One. But we do have ambitions to move into other sports and diversify. So we already have activity in IndyCar, and we recently announced that we're moving into Extreme E as well. And, you know, not just to diversify in terms of racing, but they also align very much with other goals and plans that we have as a business around sustainability. As a team, you know, motorsport is very heavily reliant on data to progress and improve, which is why it so heavily relates to us needing to, you know, make all of our decisions based on data within the recruitment space as well. And that's how people within our business engage and buy into our decisions and you know, the initiatives that we put in place, because it's built off fact and data. So I wanted to cover a little bit around what's important to us as a business, really. And I've covered 2 really important facts. Data is an obvious one. And, you know, that's why it was really important for us to engage with a partner like Recruitee to ensure we're able to be in control of the data that we're obtaining, you know, at all levels of the recruitment process to help identify and make better recruitment decisions. And we use various other tools as well, like LinkedIn, to, again, make sure we're aware of the talent demographics, you know, whether that be based on the DE&I data, whether it be based on skills, availability, competitor analysis. You know, this is all really important to building a bigger picture to analyse, break down, and help us make decisions around future hiring or even talent mapping internally with our internal talent. And as for most people in today's world, DE&I is top of our agenda when building this recruitment strategy. You know, we're fully aligned with the Races One campaign within Formula One, but we very much have our own agenda to be leaders within the motorsport. And you may have seen today, we announced this morning around a new initiative to improve diversity and inclusion within our sport. So we very much, you know, everything we do has D&I in mind to ensure we're reaching those that maybe haven't thought about motorsport as their first career. And without the data to back it up and understand who's applying for the roles, who's interested in technology and engineering, then it makes it very, very difficult to make decisions that are going to improve diversity within our sport. So again, very important to have all of the data to back these up to help us make decisions around the targets that we have around D&I. And then a bit about the importance of data in general. There's a really, really good quote that I kind of relate back to whenever I can, and that's most of the world will make decisions by either guessing or using their gut, and they will be either lucky or wrong. It's a bit of tongue in cheek, but it's really appropriate and apt. So I think it's so true. You know, if you're kind of just getting a feel for that went well because X, Y, and Z, you are really just guessing about, you know, what went well about that process or why did we get that result. It's really about the data to help you understand why that went well or why this decision ended up being the way it did. And it has such a big influence on every single part of the recruitment process as well. And I've listed a few to touch upon, just to give some examples. Obviously, the candidate experience, it's vitally important to understanding not just what candidates are experiencing, but educating our internal team around what's important to those candidates as well. You know, the candidate experience starts from the very moment they see that advert or see McLaren Racing in social, on a job advert, wherever they see us, and every touch point along that journey is having an impact on their candidate experience. So by obtaining data to understand what's important to candidates, what they want from the process, and then being able to educate our internal teams around what candidates are looking for, you know, the experience they're expecting from a recruitment process, whether that be at tools, engagement and face-to-face interaction. It's vitally important to understanding what they want and what they need from that experience to improve and you know, make it as good an experience as possible. Planning seems like a bit of an obvious one, but obviously to truly plan ahead and ensure you're in control of the result, having data around, you know, whatever your key priorities are vital to, I guess, retaining that control over the desired outcome. You know, we've got some very ambitious plans around reaching more, you know, females within engineering, you know, people from a more diverse background or underrepresented backgrounds. And without understanding, I guess, the current demographics in the UK and wider globally, it's very difficult to know where to start, but also where to focus their efforts and where to engage other partners. By having a blind approach, it's, you know, going back to that quote, you're pretty much just relying on, you know, stumbling on some luck to achieve the desired results. So, you know, some of the data we're obtaining is specifically based on skills. Some of it's based on our competitors, and we're looking at gender data, we're looking at ethnicity data, we're looking at specific skills within the various aspects of our business and tracking where those skills are moving, you know, what the gender split is between those skills. So we know whether to look at internal talent and train and develop internal talent, or whether there is an external talent pool that we can engage with and develop from there. It's also really, really important to understand where and how you're making progress within your strategy or within your targets without tracking that data and reviewing it. Going back to what Sophie explained earlier, unless you're reviewing the data and understanding, you know, when you took that action, this is what happened as a result, and here's the data to back up that this is why it happened. You can understand why you've reached that result and replicate it or evolve it to get the desired outcome. So it's very important to review data on a regular basis to ensure what you expected to happen is happening. And if not, it allows you to then review, reset your targets and go at it again. When I mention consistency, I guess this is more about having a consistent approach. And again, it all goes back to understanding what's happened and why you're getting the results that are coming through. And to really achieve consistent growth or consistent progression, you need to understand exactly what's happening within that full process. So whether that's your attraction and who's engaging with you at the different aspects, whether this be consistency in the it could be the responses that you're getting. It could be consistency in the interview preparation, but consistency is built upon knowing where you are and the data that you've got available to you. And finally, in terms of insight, I think this is one of the most important ones for me and one I focus on a lot. Having insight into, talent, what skills are progressing and what skills are available, where there is a skill shortage, really enables you to think more strategically and plan further ahead in advance. And a lot of the work we're doing at the moment in terms of talent mapping is understanding where we do have a skill shortage. And we're constantly balancing, where we can influence and improve our D&I and the diverse talent pool that we have within McLaren Racing, but also we do have a skill shortage in the UK as well. So to really effectively map out and plan how we're going to achieve those, growth targets, but also improve D&I, having the insights around, what skills have a certain gender split, what skills, have a shortage in certain areas. It helps us understand and plan where we need to focus our efforts. Here's just a really easy example how we use something like Recruitee to understand how the approaches are having an impact throughout the process. So at the start of the application process, we obtain D&I data, so gender data, ethnicity data, and using something simple within Recruitee to track the gender split at the different stages really helps us understand which teams within McLaren are really starting to focus on this and where in the process it may be falling down. So we constantly run reports to see, right, we've had a vacancy live, we've gone through the process, we've hired somebody. So at the very start, how many candidates were from a female background, how many candidates were male, and then we can fine tune that selection. So if you look here, we've got phone and video interview. We can see out of the applications, the 110 that went to phone and video interview, what was the gender split then? And then we move it to the later stages of face-to-face interviews. And again, you can see how that gender split changes as you progress through the process. And it helps understand where you may start to fall down and which parts of the process are starting to turn off the other genders that you're trying to attract into your business. So it's a really, really useful and effective way to try and understand which parts of your hiring process is having the most impact on helping bring a diverse candidate pool through. And again, the reports function is something that's vitally important to us. It's again goes down to understanding the demographics of who's applying for your roles, but having simple access that's constantly live and up to date is really important for us. So we've got various dashboards set up to help us understand, where we're getting the most candidates from. And again, we're constantly reviewing these to understand out of those that applied through LinkedIn or Indeed or from our own database, what are the gender splits between those, how many of those come from an underrepresented background. And all of that data is vitally important to us knowing and understanding where we need to invest in our recruitment marketing as well. So, in LinkedIn, for example, may be the most successful in volume of candidates, but it could be the least beneficial in terms of bringing the diverse candidate pool through. And you won't know that unless you're obtaining this data and tracking it on a regular basis. So yeah, just a really simple example of candidate origins, we then track those who are hired and again, where they come from. And then we go into a bit more detail around the DE&I data, timeframes to check to see whether, things are falling down and the process is being elongated by a certain stage in the recruitment process. But also, the rejections and the candidates that we're turning down, where are they coming from? Why are we rejecting them? So all of this data is massively helpful for us to understand exactly what's working and what's not working. I've also given just a few examples of some of the dashboards that we've set up and some of the metrics that we track. So these are dashboards that I've created for all of our departments. And the great thing about something like Recruitee is you can set up bespoke reports and dashboards for your specific areas of the business. So I'm sure many of you will be in a similar boat where our engineering and technical departments have a very specific requirement and certain things are very important to them, whereas our marketing teams are a very different makeup of individual. The things that are important to them are very different to the engineers. They come from a different cloth. They're very much different people. So what's important to them, absolutely changes. So the ability to build reports and give access to different teams, different data sets is vitally important. So, we give full overviews of the current live vacancies, and we can filter these by department, and we can filter them by, pretty much all the aspects that we've discussed previously. We have a set of 16 core KPIs that we monitor on a weekly basis within the business. So these could be things like time to hire. It could be things like the sources of where we're getting our candidates. It could be disqualifications and understanding at what stage they're falling down, or the ratios for moving to each area. So these, again, all very live data. You can just click through into them, and then we're able to access, live data at any point. Candidate sources, as I've mentioned, it's really important for us to manage budgets and make sure we're spending money in the right areas. That we understand which of our sources and talent sources are actually having the right impacts. So the candidate sources function is something that, again, was high on the priorities list when we were looking for a new ATS partner. And it's already proved, vitally useful. We've managed to save quite a bit of money in not advertising with historical job boards or other avenues where we've spent money to attract candidates, when we now understand which ones are having an impact and which ones were wasting money. And pipeline reports are, again, also really, really useful. It's something that, again, helps you understand who in the recruitment process is not necessarily failing, but, you need to coach and develop. So, we've got different people responsible for different parts of the process, whether that be at the start. Our people team are responsible for reviewing the candidates and doing the initial pass. Our management team are responsible for the interviews, and then it comes back to the people team, and we can really monitor at each point the activity and understand the time it's taking between each point, which again helps us break down, understand where we need to focus our time on improving the process and coaching individuals. And again, just a couple of other areas. We've got some really specific reports set up just for directors, just to have a higher level overview, so we're not wasting their time going through the really nitty gritty detail. They've got a really high level overview, so it's really interchangeable like that. And again, this is just, I really like this because it's just a really nice, easy snapshot of the view we get. But here's an overview of the dashboard for our core KPIs. So as you can see, we've got, current pipeline breakdown, who's at what stage, and the numbers. And we can see how many applications for each vacancy. We can see, how many have been disqualified compared to the qualified ones, which are quite high. But also the breakdown of vacancies per department. And as I mentioned, all of these are interchangeable, and you can click through to these to go into the detail of the data if you wish as well. But having this all live and available to you massively helps save time when trying to understand what's happening within your business area. And that's me done, and over to Sophie.
Yes, thank you, Richard. So now that we've focused very much on the metrics that are valuable to McLaren Racing, I would like to generalize things a little bit more by bringing you into Recruitee and showing you important metrics that we have found our customer base that they value. So you've heard talks, I think mentions of Recruitee quite a few times during this call. For those of you who are not familiar with Recruitee, it is an applicant tracking system, allowing you to manage the entire recruitment process, from publishing your jobs, managing your candidates, and of course, tracking the data behind it. So let me jump on over here into Recruitee's tool and straight into the reports section. And what you'll find here, first of all, are just some essential dashboards, which is what we call the dashboards that we provide all the customers based on popular metrics relating to candidate data. Classic ones like time to hire, top sources, disqualifications, where in what stage are candidates disqualified, how long does it take to disqualify them. Please don't use this as an example, 253 days to disqualify in my test data here. And some job overview, job related data, and finally events and evaluations. However, these, as I mentioned, are used as an example, really, to provide some insights into your recruitment metrics. That might not mean that these particular ones are meaningful to you. So this is what we mentioned before as well, to really find meaningful metrics for your company to align with your business goals. So that's why I have created my own dashboards with the reports that are meaningful to me. And to me, in this case, this is based on the data of our customer base, what's meaningful to them. So to provide you with a little bit of insight, what other companies are measuring in terms of their recruitment. So that's why I created a management dashboard here with some general metrics. I also created other dashboards looking into various departments or for internships. But of course, this depends on what makes sense for you, how to divide up your data. Perhaps you want to divide it according to different business units, locations perhaps. But in my case, let's have a look at this management dashboard. So what we have found to be very valuable metrics to our customer base is candidates over time. Personally, I love overtime reporting because it's really great in order to identify patterns. It's not set data and numbers at a certain point in time, but we can really see the movement of the numbers. So this here is candidates over time, but I can always edit my data if I want to look at hires over time, disqualifications over time. So it doesn't have to be limited to just this. And that's something that you can, I would say the number one thing in Recruitee is playing with grouping by, and playing with filters. So you can really make these reports your own. So what I've done here is simply adding new reports, playing around with it, and you'll see on one hand, you do not have to be a data analyst to do this. But on the other hand, you have so many options to really get the data that matters to you. All right, so let me show you a few other examples that I've had a look at here. Current pipeline breakdown, also what Richard was looking at earlier, my top candidate sources, but perhaps I want to see the top sources of the ones I then hire. That way I know, okay, I have 13 Indeed candidates, but none of them were hired. So I might not want to spend my money promoting my jobs on Indeed, for example. Furthermore, this is one that I personally really like. Time to hire is obviously a classic metric. However, looking at it, sometimes time to hire does not really tell you that much information. Why is it taking longer in one job versus another? And here you can really identify bottlenecks and see where you can improve and become more efficient. Why is it that my evaluation stage is taking too long? Is it that my communication with my hiring managers is lagging a bit? How can we improve this? So here you can really narrow it down further. Some other key metrics here that I have, looking at proceed rates. So I can see how many candidates have entered how many have proceeded, to really see the conversion there. And the same going for the candidates dropping off here. And then I can simply duplicate my dashboard and add date ranges and filters so that I can look at other areas here. Maybe I want to look at a particular department. And then I have that data relating to this instead. All right, let me move back into our presentation here. And just a quick reminder that you have the questions tab in the just where you can pose questions. The second one next to chats, because we have reached that part of the presentation where we'd love to hear any questions you might have and answer those for you. Perhaps also any questions relating to your own recruitment. I see one question just came in. How do I get trained on Recruitee? Is there an online training that I can take? Well, Recruitee itself is a system that you would use to manage your recruitment. So if you would be interested in Recruitee to manage your recruitment, you can request a demo at recruitee.com, and we'll have someone from our team show you around. Any other questions, perhaps? Or even comments? Was there anything in particular that you enjoyed or found insightful? Okay, we have a couple of questions come in. Can we export some of the dashboards to make an internal document? Yes, absolutely. As CSV or PNG. And Maria, I am guessing your question is specifically to Recruitee, how time to hire is measured. If that is the case, it is measured from the time that the candidate enters, that the candidate applies, basically, yes. And we have a question from Bryce, which I think is also Recruitee related. How can we have a dashboard that summarizes all the scorecards on a candidate across several evaluations? If I'm not mistaken, Recruitee offers evaluations, data on evaluations here, so you'll be able to see that. I'm not sure if that is exactly what you were looking for. But here you'd be able to see the various evaluations given, and then you can always edit and play around with these reportings. Again, filter and grouping according to what is important to you. Any other questions, perhaps also to Richard about metrics at McLaren Racing, perhaps?
There's one in the chat, Sophie, from Rob around sourcing of candidates and how to get the most from sources that come to Recruitee via an email link, because they lose the source. I can kind of touch on this from how I get around that. Most of the job boards, or whether it be LinkedIn, allow you to set up a job and provide the link to your Recruitee job advert for people to apply through that, but it still tracks the source from that job board. So we have posted on Indeed, on Total Jobs when we've needed to, and we choose the URL link to the job, and it tracks the source of where that's come from. So you're still able to attract and keep track of all of that data.
Perfect. If you need any assistance on how to do that with the URL itself, Rob, if you search for UTM source within the help desk center of Recruitee, you'll find the right article. Okay, Melvin has, if there's a way to know the detailed definitions, for example, the metrics used for time to hire might be different from a company to another. So if I understand it correctly, Melvin, you would like to have more details into how the data is measured within Recruitee? From my understanding, with the new reports, this whole report builder that we see here. Okay, got it. Thank you for confirming, Melvin. We have added more descriptions, but I can understand that in some cases you might want a little bit more details as to how, it is actually measured. So let me discuss that with our analytics team and see what we have in store for that. But if you have any specific ones, where you say, okay, these are the ones we really need to know how it's measured, feel free to state them in the chat or questions, or to send us an email to support@recruitee.com, so we know exactly also which ones are meaningful to you, so we can look into that. All right, any other questions? Okay. Oh, I think here from Tom. Perhaps would you like to take this one, Richard, as you are currently tracking gender-related data?
Yeah, sure. So we track this through the application form. So we put a multiple choice answer, which enables us to filter based on those answers. So we ask for that data early on, and then we're able to run reports on various aspects. So we can pull data for specific parts or for the whole, application of a vacancy, all of our vacancies. You can split it however you want, but as long as it's within that application form, you're able to track it that way.
All right. Anything else, perhaps? What are the metrics you use to measure interviewers' hiring process, interview case performance? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. What I have, for example, as an example here would be proceed rate. So here I can easily see how many candidates enter and how many actually proceed from the interview stage. So that could be one metric used to measure the success of the candidates that you do interview. Is that something along the lines of what you were asking, Bryce? Or Richard, perhaps you have anything else interview related that you measure?
Yeah, kind of. So when I'm looking at the people we have interviewing candidates and monitoring how they perform from an interviewer perspective. We have evaluations set up so that when a manager is set to interview a candidate, there's a set evaluation form for them to fill out and score. And these are viewed purely by those managers. So if there's more than one manager, they both have their own form and they fill those out, and then we'll catch up after that interview and discuss why they've scored in that manner, so we can understand their thought process and how they've approached those answered. So if it's in regards to assessing the interviewer's performance, that's how we'll discuss that and identify why they've made those decisions so that we can make sure we're evaluating in the same way or have the right approach.
Perfect. And we've got another one for you, Richard. Do McLaren make use of anonymization to demonstrate an absence of unconscious bias in the early stages of recruitment?
Yeah, we do. There's a couple of ways we do this. We do have a piece of technology that masks details within the CV. So just the name, background, anything that would associate them with their gender, their age, background, it blanks all of that out so we can focus on skills. So that's one way that we do it. When it gets to the hiring stage, we're quite keen to add in either a psychometric test, or quite often in our marketing teams, we'll add a task. So we'll give them a brief and ask them to present some work. And that way we're reviewing, physical based work rather than somebody's view or answer around something. So it's a really good unbiased way to evaluate candidates when you have multiple, by looking at a specific test or getting them to do a piece of work.
And that relates directly to Ben's question as well, if personal information can be omitted from the candidate profile when being evaluated. So as Richard says, they are using a separate tool for that. But if you do use Recruitee, Ben, this is something that's planned for this year within Recruitee as well.
This is something you can do in Recruitee now. It's I think the process you have in mind for later will be better, but in the meantime you can share candidates and only share certain bits of information with people. So you can implement that if you wish to.
Okay, we've got another question from Dipendra. Most of the time I got confused and having a hard time to track pipeline data, like candidates from every pipeline to keep moving, meaning the same candidates didn't stay in one pipeline. If I wanted to check on last week in which particular candidates there were, reports of pipeline date-wise.
I don't think this is something you can do in Recruitee at the moment, but I agree that would be useful. One thing I would say is, and that would help you manage this, is before you start the process of recruiting and interviewing, is to have a really clear defined process for that position. So you meet with your hiring team, with your management team, and discuss what the process will be for that role. And if you understand that from the start and record that in your job in Recruitee or whichever platform you use, then you know the process that candidate went through. And I think that's equally important for making sure that there's an equal process for everyone. If you've got one process for one person, but somebody else had to do a test or, did 3 interviews and somebody else only had to do 1, then you could have an equality issue. So I would say it would help if you managed to discuss and confirm the process for that requirement upfront.
Great, thank you, Richard. And Lena is asking if one can automate that when uploading a file with a CV of a candidate in Recruitee, if one can put a source automatically as hunting. When simply uploading, let's say with drag and drop, you'd add the source separately. However, if you use the tool or technique that Richard was referring to earlier, where you define a source with the particular URL, it will then automatically be added. Any other questions, perhaps? Well, I'm very happy to see a lot of you did ask questions. All right. In that case, you'll all be sent a recording of today's session as well, so that you can look back at that at any time as well. I'd like to say thank you very much for participating today, and I hope you found it very helpful. Any last words from you, Richard?
No, thanks for having me. I'm a very keen advocate of basing all of your actions based on data and facts. So I couldn't recommend ensuring you've got access to the data sets that are important to you. But yeah, no, it's been enjoyable. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for joining. All right. Take care, everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.